Well, you're very welcome to this unusual way of understanding the disc profile and temperament model. I probably sent this to you in advance of meeting up. And I know when we meet up, we're certainly going through a lot more stuff. Um, but so that we maybe make most use of the time on the day, understanding your particular way of being in the world, your strengths, and um, and how you responded in terms of the model. I'm actually sending you these slides and a bit of narration to allow you quickly come up to speed on probably something you're going to understand or appreciate anyway. We're going to look at how people are different in the world, um, but uniquely, we're looking at what it is that sets you apart. So, in the next couple of slides, um, I'm just going to ask you to be curious, first of all, about people, but as we go through it, just kind of where do you see yourself fitting into all of this? So I'm going to go through it as I would on the day. Stop and reflect at any part that you want. Um, and we will go through some more on the day. And if you have any questions, absolutely, we'll get to understand them all. Um, you've probably done your own profile and you're going to see yourself in here. Maybe you're going to see friends, family, work colleagues. Um, I'd love if you could make this as real as possible in your context and world. And because when we meet, Um, we're going to look and see specifically what it is that sets you apart. Um, that question, wanting to be a master at, in this case, player, but the word player um, it could be changed for anything like leader, cook, toilet cleaner. It doesn't really matter. But there's probably three things that make a big impact on how we're successful or become a master. Um, there's those things that we've learned in the past. Basically, that's your CV up until now. How intelligent are you? That's your IQ. Your education, it could have been extensive, it may not have been. Experiences, some good and some bad environments, yeah, some that worked and some that didn't. Down at the bottom there, you've got that why. Why do you do what you do? Or why are you going through this process with Fran anyway? There's a lot more to that. But that's the fundamental reason um, behind why you're doing what you're doing. What's pushing you deep down to be the best you can and to master yourself. But the piece of work he did was more about how. How do you go about being in the world? Um, and this is very easy to spot. Along the right hand column there, you see the word observable behaviour. Very shortly after we meet people, it's very easy to work out who they are and how they prefer to be in the world. You can go back home to family or friends or loved ones and just say, yeah, um, I've taken the measure of the individual just by what you see. And probably very much our first nature. And wouldn't it be great in life if you got to play to your first nature? In other words, it was natural and easy for you to be in the world, the way you naturally go about being. This slide just gives you a little bit about the academic background to kind of our understanding of people. And actually, if you see up there, 460 BC, before Christ, that was Hippocrates, the Hippocratic Oath, as you might see in the medical profession. He had this idea that there was fluids flushing through our bodies um, that in some way defined or made up how we were. He actually wasn't a million miles wrong. Although if you look at some of the names he's given them there, green phlegm or yellow bile, kind of horrible. Carl Jung in the 20s, for any of you who've studied psychology, his name will come up quite a lot. But William Malden Marston there in 1928, having worked in institutions all his life, took a view that there was even greater value in bringing his learning and understanding of how people are into the natural world. Um, he wrote a quite extensive book on it. I have a copy. I'll give it to you if you want. I've struggled to read through it. Um, And the particular model that you've done has probably owes a lot to Thomas Hendrickson. And those words, DIS and C, DISC, dominance, influence, steadiness, and compliance. We've got very clever too using computers, haven't we? Back in the day, this was all kind of done by psychologists and very, very informed people. An interesting thing about William Marston, the M stands for Molden, William Molden Marston. Under the name William Marston, he was a research and occupational psychologist and probably didn't make much money. But William Molden was the name he used to invent and develop the brand which still exists today, that of Wonder Woman. It's kind of mad that somebody who's involved in such a very kind of steady sort of discipline like psychology would come up with a superhero. But actually, I think when you go deep into your brain, it's amazing what you'll find down there in terms of superpowers that you might like to have. So let's look at people. Well, actually, we're not looking at people, we're going to be looking at you. But let me just talk about people in general. And at the top there, at the North Pole as such, there's those people who, when a decision needs to be made, they use their head. It all happens from the neck up. Whereas at the bottom of the South Pole, there's very much those who are relationship orientated. It's about the people. Decisions maybe come from their heart. They think of the person first. Whereas at the top, at the North Pole, they maybe think of the process, the outcome, the task. Neither right, neither wrong, just very, very different ways of going about being in the world. If we look at the horizontal axis is on the right, there are those people then who are very extroverted, out there in a crowd, liking it, loving it actually in some cases, bring it on. Direct in what they say and what they do. They'll say things straight out. Fran, your hair looks crap. They're probably right, but they'll just say it. And fast acting, fast thinking, fast talking. Even you can hear the pace at which I'm talking about now. They speak very, very fast. Sometimes it's hard to keep up with, and halfway through they don't finish because halfway through a sentence they may not finish what they started to say because it's going through their head so quickly they just can't get the words out quick enough. Whereas if you flip all of those onto the left-hand side, yeah, introverted. Doesn't mean that they want to be in a room on their own, although they do prefer the close company of a small group of people they can trust. Slower acting and talking, and you can hear that my pace has changed, more measured. And you've met those people as well. They just take a little bit more time to do and think. Indirect would be something like when commenting on somebody's hair, they might say, yeah, listen, could you have a chat with Fran? I think his hair is letting him down. There's product you can get. So the top right quadrant, the combination of thinking and extroverted, kind of derived with the word dominant, D for dominance. Down the bottom right, the combination of right and bottom there with the word influence. Steadiness is in bottom left and compliance is in top left. DIS and C, disc, as in a disc, a shape of a football. This model, however, that I'm going to go through with you makes it a little bit easier because they put colours on it. Yeah, like the colour red. Because if I was to say to you, you know, somebody's temperament was dominant or red in nature, what comes to mind? Interestingly, most people would say angry, fiery, yeah, red rag to a bull. Others would say passionate. It doesn't matter what word you say, it's what came into your mind. But on a good day, these are people who are very, and you can read them there yourself, very decisive. They know exactly what they want. They make up their mind very quickly. Bold as in risk. They're comfortable taking chance. Actually, they need chances and risks to be taken. Most likely to drive the car faster than anybody else. As a hobby, more likely to jump out of a plane at the weekend in a parachute jump. And forceful, pushing themselves and everybody else. The bottom right there, when you think of the colour yellow, what comes to mind? Actually, if you're sort of to show up at a party or at a training event and somebody there was wearing a yellow outfit and driving a yellow car, these are people who are quite out there. So the yellow, like the sun, they brighten up a room once they come in. And on a good day, these are people who are very, expressive. Words are their tool. They get you excited just by what they say. Very influential in how they go about things. The bottom left, green. The word was steady, but when you think of the colour green, what comes to mind? For some people, green is like down to earth, the Green Party, grounded. Yeah, it's actually the colour too that surgeons wear and thought to be the most calming of colours. That's why that word is in there as well. Um, yeah, surgeon doesn't want his head wrecked by a cerise pink gown glaring at him. Um, the colour green is quite calming. They can calm people in situations down. Quite caring, they put themselves out for other people. Can I give you a hand? Yeah, they want to help other people. And quite humble, can sometimes struggle to take compliments, prefer to be behind the scenes. Top left, the blue, or the compliant. So what comes to mind there? Most people talk about royal blue, the deep blue sea, or the boys in blue. Yeah, the boys in blue is an interesting word because it's the letter of the law. The idea if he was travelling, Your Honour, at 47.45 kilometres per hour in a northwesterly direction. For most of us, he was going at 50. But no, it's about being precise. Yeah, and these are very precise people, dotting I's and crossing T's, and they'll spot mistakes at 1,000 paces. Um, they like to work systematically through problems and situations. They'll start at, let's say, A, work through A. Have we done A well enough? Yeah, we have. Could we do it better? Yes, maybe we could. Okay, let's repeat A until it's as good as possible. Okay, now let's move on to B. Um, wouldn't be the same for everyone else. The yellows, for instance, might start at letter S. Why? Why not? Um, but as you look at that, I'm sure you're connecting with people that you know. Great. But that's, by the way, a good day. We don't all have good days because those reds or dominants, yeah, they can get aggressive. The angry streak, intolerant of themselves and everybody else. The yellows, expressive, dynamic, high spirited. We enjoy their company, but they can sometimes rush into things. Now, don't tell anyone, but I've got piles. And you show up the following night and meet them, and everyone says, "How's your piles?" Ah, I told you to tell nobody. I just said it to Mary. She's a nice girl. I didn't think. They sometimes don't think. The greens, yeah, calming, caring, humble, but actually can find it hard sometimes to make up their mind because they look at all the possibilities, left and right, up and down, in and out. And actually, sometimes it's hard to move from that place of analysis. Most likely to be bland in a response. Um, they might say something like when you ask them how are they getting on, sure, I'm fine, I'm grand. They're not really, but that's what they say. The blues, the compliant people, yeah, very precise and structured and disciplined, but never quite sure because there's only one way to be, and that is sure. So let me go away and double check. Already, you're probably connected with people that you know in each of those four colours. By the way, we're not all one colour. That's a really important thing to look at here. Um, this is an example, maybe something similar to the graph that I'll have when I meet up with you. Um, as you can see here, this person on the scale of 0 to 28, a whopping amount of red. Yeah, bit of yellow, bit less green, okay, good bit of blue. Um, so we'd say this person is predominantly red. In other words, that's their sort of most of their strengths and traits are in that kind of area. Um, when people sort of say to me, "Red, would that be Michael O'Leary or Roy Keane?" Yeah, yeah, you're probably right. I've never worked with them, but I have worked with people who report directly to them. and they say, yeah, that's definitely Roy. God, that's him to a T. Um, he goes off and has a rant, but you're leaving at it. The most interesting thing I found though is when somebody has two colours, or in some cases three, it gets an awful lot more complicated. It's like having a voice on either shoulder, equally giving you advice, guidance, and direction for your greatest good, but not necessarily um, working in harmony, sometimes competing. But listen, more about that anon. Um, I'm going to ask you to pause the presentation now and have a think of somebody you know who would fit into each of those four categories. Um, this is purely to make it real world in your context. This is not just about a sequence of slides. This is about understanding the people around you and the context within which you find yourself. Teachers have been amazed at how they've been able to teach kids better. Managers have got more out of their staff. Partners have got more out of their relationships just by beginning to understand the simple things that allow us to communicate and connect in an even more impactful way. So pause just for a few moments and put a name of somebody you know against each of those four. We can have a chat about them when we meet up on the day. But the chances are whoever you chose in the red quadrant, when asked to take one small word, one word that would finish off the phrase do it, and when you're sort of, what would they most likely say? It's usually do it now. Now that's what you thought when you're bang on. Do it now. Come on, get stuck in. What are you waiting for? Um, by the way, sometimes they'll say do it yourself, but do it now is usual. The yellows are much more do it together. They need people around them. They like having people around them. They do better with people around them. Whereas the greens are probably more do it discreetly, behind the scenes. They don't like being credited. Um, yeah, so you'll usually find them hidden in the background. Um, but if you're a blue, there's only one way to do things, and that's do it right. Yeah, they like to do things right, and they need to know what right is. Right needs to be explained, documented, laid out. Um, they actually like to go to college to learn how to do things right. Okay, make sense? Okay, now just kind of looks at some of the emotions that may be associated with these people. Angry, yeah. Fiery is another word. Although actually people who are red like the word passionate. They consider the word red as a more passionate colour. Um, Yet the yellows are more emotional. You know where you stand with them. They can be way on up and way on down. The greens are non-emotional. Now it doesn't mean that they're not emotional, it just means they prefer not to show it. That's where the how are you doing at grand comes in. But deep down they are. Um, by the way, these little graphics here doesn't mean that men are red and women are yellow. They're just the little graphics I've chosen. Um, what I've actually found is there's an equal distribution of men and women in each of the different colours. By the way, interestingly, countries can have colours, and companies have colours, teams have colours, workplaces have predominant colours. Be interesting as you're going along to think about the context within which you find yourself, the relationship, um, the workplace, the sporting team, the country you come from. Just get you thinking in a different way. Okay, let's put this now in a more business context. Red, these are some of the things you may find associated with Reds. They like to challenge the status quo. Yeah, things have been like this for far too long. I'm going to change them. But very good at rolling up their sleeves, getting stuck in, and uh, and changing things. They do like to be in charge, by the way, and very hard to tell them what to do because in their mind they're in charge. Make sense? So pace and change, especially from a career perspective, that's important to them. Yellows, Pace and change, again, are important. But here we see things like steering away from detail. Now, it doesn't mean that they can't do detail, it just means it drains them. Doing their tax returns or sort of spending all day mulling over a spreadsheet, it just wrecks their head. Um, but great at promoting change, enthusing people, getting you excited. And again, pace and change. Interestingly, they're the ones who require the most constant change. In career, they can make really, really significant career moves and jumps. Um, yeah, in a company, they need to be constantly moved from project or division or customer. Otherwise, they just get bored. So if pace and change are important on this right side, when we move to the left, we begin to slow things down. Because with the greens, actually, can we not keep things the same? I like things the way they are. Yeah, great team players. They're the ones who play for the team. Everyone else will say they're a team player, but in my experience, these are the individuals who value the team environment the most. And they're great at helping everybody else. They will put themselves out. By the way, if the yellows don't like detail, the blues up on the top left, oh, they love it. Give them a spreadsheet, a bill of quantities, a piece of legislation, a document. Um, they're the ones who can work through them and appreciate having them as tools to get the job done well and right. They like to plan too for change, so plan, that's a really important thing for them. Without a plan, they can be very, very much at sea. Might even be just one line in a document, one page, but it certainly is something if well thought out, they appreciate. So there's some of the natural behaviours. So what do we need in life? And then the next slide is about things that we need. And people will say, Fran, we just need money. Like that's why we work. Um, well, yeah, that usually covers you for the first 3 months. But after that, there's things in life that we need. And this is an example of what these people typically appreciate over and above the wage packet. And actually, if they're not getting this, life can be very difficult and challenging. Um, the Reds just like the outcome. They probably don't care how it's got or achieved that. They'll take shortcuts, but the result will be delivered. Um, yeah, walking backwards up Kilimanjaro. Why? Because it's never been done before. Yeah, there's an achievement in that. The yellows are the ones who like change and acknowledgement. They like their work to be acknowledged. They like to be out front, and they need to be out front. Um, Most likely to have the latest technology or outfits um, because they're comfortable looking at what's new. The greens, and yeah, they're the ones who like to be accepted and acknowledged as part of a greater good, um, but appreciate knowing that in sort of 2 or 3 years' time they have a good idea of what they're going to be doing. If you're looking at standards, by the way, look to the blues. They are the highest standards. Actually, sometimes so high it's hard for the rest of us to keep up with them. Um, and appreciation as a word, that tends to need to come from people who know what they're talking about. So I remember working with a structural engineer once who, when I acknowledged or complimented him on a piece of work that I'd seen him doing, I went in one ear and out the other because I know nothing about structural engineering. But he did get an award from the Institute of Engineers for the very same piece of work. And there was a smile as big as Dublin Harbour from one side of his face to the other. Does that make sense? Yeah, things that we need. And of course, the question is, does your environment or your context currently against what you need, does it deliver it? By the way, this slide is all it's saying is that in each of the four quadrants, each of the four colours, um, that there are different levels, adjectives at the particular level within each colour. As you can see, none of them are right, none of them are wrong, but we all have a unique combination. Um, Interestingly, given that the outcome of the report, um, there are 4 scales, and each scale will have a separate number on the scale of 1 to 100. So let's say it could be 64 or 10, and there are 4 separate scales. Mathematically, that works out as 100 by 100 by 100 by 100, 1 in 100 million, which just kind of reaffirms the premise that you are unique, just like everybody else. At this stage, you have a good idea. Most people do. They say, yeah, I think I know which way I am now. Um, Sometimes we know what we'd like to be, but in this process, I'd ask you to be as honest as you can. Yeah, so you probably know where you've come. And all we're doing here is just begin to say, well, what does that mean in the real world? What sets you apart? Um, if we were to take some business words against each of those 4 quadrants, they're words you're familiar with or you've seen. The Greens are great at analysing, looking at sort of, all of the different sort of ins and outs of a situation or a context or a problem. Having analysed it, though, the yellows love looking to the future, down the line, 3 years' time, where will it need to be? But if we know where it needs to be, the reds are great at strategically putting in place the bits and pieces that are needed, the money, the people, the systems. But the blues are great at executing and ensuring that stuff happens on time and to budget. Within a leadership context, we may talk about that on the day. Here's just 8 words. And you begin to get a sense of we're all leaders, but we just have different ways of leading people. We usually lead people. There's no need to lead a machine in a factory. It tends to work away, but the people who install, fix, maintain, improve, they all need to be led. And, you might find your eyes being drawn to one word there, or a combination of words, because remember, we're not all just one colour, we're a mixture. Given that those colours are there, I've just tried to give an outline of what might be the traditional or the stereotypical roles in a large company. So let's say like a big, huge bank, where all the different departments would exist. CXO, by the way, at the top there, that's Chief Financial Officer, Chief Technical Officer, Chief Information Officer. That's where somebody has blue and red, an interesting and challenging place to be, because they bring the best of blue and the best of red. They like to know their stuff. They like to be qualified and competent, but they also like to sit at the top table and make decisions and have input into decisions. Again, this is stereotypical. It doesn't mean that every accountant needs to be blue, although what I've discovered is for accountants who are blue, they tend to excel at it. They're pretty good at it. I have met accountants who are yellow, but A, they don't enjoy it, and B, they tend to make an awful lot more mistakes, because remember, they're not into detail. And you can begin to see by understanding and appreciating your particular way of being in the world, how this can be useful into making an informed decision. HR for green, human resources, looking after people. Have they got their contracts, their development plans? Marketing for yellow, looking down the line. Where will things need to be in a couple of years' time? What words and images do we need to represent to the customer to enthuse them? The reds, being in charge, they can make tough decisions, and they're quite comfortable making tough decisions. It does get harder though when you've got 2 colours. And sales director there, a combination of red and yellow. Where does that come from? Well, the red in them is absolutely driven to get the outcome, but the yellow, let's bring people with us. let's get the bottom line, the red, but let's enjoy it as we go along. Um, on the extreme left there, the technical manager, tech manager, coordinator, the blue and the green. Again, that individual who maybe has people at the heart of them, but understands the blue stuff. They're great at managing people who are technical. Um, Sometimes then the question is, well, where do salespeople sit? Um, Actually, in my experience, they sit everywhere. There is no right. And again, this is, remember, purely stereotypical. Doesn't mean that every MD is red. Um, so now you can begin to see when a company is green and the leader is green, that actually is pretty cool. It's a good way to be. Although it can be hard when the company is red and the leader is green, that can bring its own problems. Of course, the only important question here is, what colour are you? Um, last slide here is probably sectors. Um, if you wanted the typical quiz, pause this now and have a think of maybe kind of sectors of the marketplace that are typically red, yellow, green, or blue. See how you get on. So yeah, take a moment and pause it. But if you didn't, there's some of the sectors that the reds like. Entrepreneurship. They like setting up their own companies. It's hard sometimes to deal with everybody else telling you what to do. So you know what, I'll set up my own gig. Um, Stockbroking, why? Because you need to make some tough decisions with other people's money. Here's where you invest the 10 million, and whether the markets go up or go down, they can still sleep at night. Um, Newspapers, yeah. 10 past 6, the paper goes to print. It's not 11 minutes past 6. Yeah, so time is very important to those guys and women. Yellow, and there's just some suggestions. They like to be out front, very much in the creative arena. Make sense? With the greens, the idea of vocational, liking to help, to care for. And, the blues, I think you'll find here, typically these are college courses where we learn to do what we do in work. So in accountancy, do you know what? We have a balance sheet with €5. 20 years later, I'm working in a company with 55 million euro. It's still the same balance sheet. But they appreciate going and doing a college course that positions them on a daily basis to do what they do in work. Whereas the yellows, they would wreck their head. They like the freedom to express themselves in a multitude of different ways. But of course, when we meet the next day, the real question is, what's your profile? And we'll have the results. We'll go through any of those slides that we've just looked at, but you're up to speed now, and you've probably had a chance to reflect. It just means that when we meet, we can look at the specifics of your profile. Again, this will not define you. It's purely a way of kicking off a conversation objectively, compared against other kind of people in careers and life and studying. What sets you apart? And of course, then they're the skills and strengths that we'll capitalize on throughout our work together. They're the clues that will help us make better decisions. The North Poles that will help guide and fashion and shape our thinking. Looking forward to meeting you.